Hello everyone and welcome back to where we sometimes talk about thrillers on Thursdays, and today's video is not going to be a thriller or a horror novel review. It's going to be a little bit different. We're just going to be talking about someone, and that is Gillian Flynn. Now, if you happen to be new to my channel, I review mainly thriller and horror novels here, sometimes movies and TV shows, but if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you will know that Gillian Flynn is my favorite author of all time. Before Gone Girl came out, I was a big fan of her first books, Sharp Objects and Places. I'll link all of those reviews down below, and I'm not normally going to sound like a book hipster on this channel. If anything, I'm late to the game when it comes on a lot of new releases, but I was pretty on in the Gillian Flynn love. I have a Discord group where we just casually chat about all things horror, and there have been a couple comments lately. One, that she did say she is writing a new book, and two, that there was a Gillian Flynn Gone Girl cruise. And that just made me fall down this rabbit hole of reading about her, the whole trajectory of her career. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a video about everything that I found. I will have timestamps linked down below, but I will just say I don't want you to be waiting to the end of the video to find out what her new book is about. She's not announced what it's about, but I will just give you the few details that she shared so far. So before even talking about her books, I thought it was interesting to maybe hear a little bit about what her world was like before she became a writer, or I shouldn't say writer, before she started writing novels. So Gillian Flynn originally worked for 15 years as a journalist. She worked for US News and Report, but a lot of her career was spent at Entertainment Weekly as a TV critic. And I'll have some quotes from her throughout this video, but she said, "I could not have written a novel if I hadn't been a journalist first, because it taught me that there's no muse that's going to come down and bestow upon you the mood to write. You just have to do it. I'm definitely not precious." And to me, when I heard this, it was not really surprising, because throughout all of her books, she has these really interesting pop culture references. It's not laden with them. It's not like, for example, what was that book, Ready Player One? But you can feel this intense awareness of pop culture that she has. So it wasn't surprising that she spent so long as a journalist at Entertainment Weekly. So after working for 15 years as a journalist, she started writing during her career Sharp Objects. So in 2006, she released Sharp Objects. Then 3 years later, in 2009, she released Dark Places. Then in 2012, 3 years later, she released Gone Girl. And then 3 years after that, she wrote The Grown Up. Again, I'll have my reviews of those all listed down below, but I'm sure you heard the very obvious pattern that was every 3 years, which of course has stopped since then. This video is not going to dive into Gone Girl itself. There's so many interesting articles online about the influence Gone Girl has had on the writing world, but I think she's really opened the door for a lot of really dark female writers. And there are even tiny things like you can look at the extreme rate that the word girl has increased in titles of especially thrillers and horror novels. But for me personally, I love her books because of how acerbic and dark and realistic and also occasionally funny that they feel. So again, she had this theme of writing a novel every 3 years, and it stopped, but she has been busy since then. So now I'm going to talk about her other projects. So in 2018, she had two big things. She wrote the screenplay for the movie Widows, which I feel like no one saw, but I really liked it and I do highly recommend it. And she was also the co-writer for Sharp Objects, which came out on HBO, one of my favorite miniseries of all time, which Sharp Objects was fairly popular, but I also don't think that the TV show got to the level of popularity that I think it deserved. I've actually been really craving rewatching it for a really long time. Then in 2020, she was the writer and creator of the TV show Utopia, and this was based off of a 2013 British series of the same name. And then again, I had that horror Discord group, and someone posted that she had a Gone Girl cruise. I'll insert an image of some information here. And I also watched a YouTube video of a YouTuber who went on the Gone Girl cruise and talked about her experience. You know, in the top 20 adjectives of myself, jealous or jealousy would not be high up there. But I will be fully transparent that I am just seething with jealousy that I was not on this cruise. It was an 8-day cruise hosted by Avalon Waterways along the Danube River had a max of 150 passengers. In her video, she talks a lot about just the experience of the cruise itself, but I did make note of some of the things she mentioned that Gillian Flynn has shared. She shares how friendly and open she was to talk to, that Gillian was going on the excursions with, the other people on the trip. And one thing I found really interesting, because they of course had a Q&A with all the passengers and her, and I always assumed that she had a very methodical process. Like, I would assume, especially with some of the twists, that she either thinks of the twist first or plots it out in really extreme detail but she actually said she normally thinks of a concept or just a high-level vague idea and builds the story off of that. So with Gone Girl, the concept that she thought of was a man coming home and just finding his door open, which I thought was really interesting. And at least from what I've read also, because there was an article about the cruise from a journalist who went on it, it sounded interesting because it sounds like some of the people, their cruise got pushed off because of COVID and they were put on this cruise. I know what most people are probably picturing, which was the case, that there were some people on the cruise who had no idea what Gone Girl is. But just imagine if it was someone like you or me who loves her books and your cruise got pushed off, you're sad because of COVID, and then suddenly you're sitting next to Gillian Flynn. I would pass out. So now let's dive into her next novel, what she shared, and what a lot of people are probably interested in, which is whether there will be a sequel to Gone Girl. Of course, I want her to write another book soon, but I also have a lot of authors that I love, so I don't actually feel this like insane pressure, you know, towards her to write another book. One piece she did share when someone asked her about whether or not she felt pressure for this next book, and this is an interview in May of 2022. She said, "Oh yeah, it's a fictional pressure, I assume, but at the same time, to be honest, I wish I'd published something 5 years ago, because now I can feel the pain of 10 years after she published Gone Girl, she's finally publishing the new one, and it better be good because it took 10 years for her to do it, exclamation point." And she did say that right now she is solely dedicated to writing her next novel and just letting her imagination run wild. But she did admit that she is struggling with this first draft of her newest book. And she said, "I've definitely had those moments where I think, do I even know how to write a book? And I get very frustrated. Once in a while, I'll flip open a little bit of a previous novel and read it and go, oh right, this is what my voice sounds like. This is what I do. This is how it goes. I remember now, and that makes me feel better." So again, she hasn't really shared at all any details of the plot of the next book, but she did say that it is not going to be a Gone Girl sequel, which I think a lot of people might be upset by, but I really enjoyed Sharp Objects, Gone Girl, and Dark Places really pretty equally. I'm sure in the past, you know, I've been reviewing her books for 10 years. I'm sure I've ranked them at some point, but it's just been so long, I don't remember. I'm realizing as I said that, I kind of did just admit which one I like least because I forgot to even mention The Grown Up. And I have said before on my channel that it was not my favorite of, you know, in comparison to the other books. But in 2018, when describing this new book she's writing, she did say, and this of course will not be surprising, it's very sinister and dark, and there are definitely some funny pieces to it. Brett, my husband, has read the first page, which is a fucking spectacular first page. It's the greatest first page that I've ever written. And the only other detail in the book she shared is that there was an auction where you could pay, and of course went to a charity, a good cause, to have your name put in her newest book. So that's everything that she shared. Of course, if there are any big updates on the plot of the next book, or if she has any other interviews, I'll definitely make sure to post that information here. So feel free to subscribe if you're also a big Gillian Flynn or just a big thriller or horror fan. And this is also making me realize that I don't think ever done a video where on one of those, if you love Gillian Flynn, you should read XYZ authors. So maybe that's something I should do down the road. So feel free to let me know if you're interested. But again, I hope you all are doing well and staying safe. Hope you're enjoying the new holiday background. This is my setup for when I'm filming now that it gets dark inevitably at 4 p.m. But I will see you all in the next one. Bye.